Good evening. I plan to just post a short video tonight, but yesterday I read one of my videos from yesterday was the reading of Brother John Smith's letter, and there was a date in there. It says that his letter was dated in April of 1989, but then it also said that the elders training book he was referring to was from June of 1989. And so I started looking through elders training books to figure out which elders training the quotes were from. And in doing so, I just came across so many passages that I feel should be addressed or read aloud. And so I'm just going to read two paragraphs mainly today, and you can look at the context. I will post a link to this document in the video description. But okay, so the context a little bit is just Brotherly is saying, actually, I will read 3 paragraphs. So the title of this section is The Need of All the Churches to be Identical. And it is from the Elders Training, Book 7, One Accord for the Lord's Move, I believe, Chapter 4. The need of all the churches to be identical. Okay, so I'm just going to read 3 paragraphs. We agree that there are only one God, one Spirit, one Lord, one church, one recovery, and one testimony. If this is the Lord's recovery, it is unique. Regardless of who we are, if we would not take this way, we have no other way to go on. After those dissenting ones left the recovery, they were wandering. Consider objectively what other way there is for them to take. Is the church more than one? Is the testimony of the Lord more than one? Is God more than one? Is the Spirit more than one? Is the Lord more than one? Okay, by implication, he's saying there's only, he also said there's only one recovery, and the recovery is unique, just as God is unique. Okay, some left the recovery as gentlemen because they felt they could not take this way and made it clear they wanted to take another way. They are gentlemen. I respect them and their ethics. Even these dear ones who left the recovery in a gentlemanly way had their spiritual future damaged. There is no exception to this over the years. Then the analogy that he draws is, once a married female has a divorce, her entire human life has been damaged. Some people in America remarry 4 or 5 times, but we know that in the eyes of God, and even in the eyes of ethical persons, divorce is not the way of the proper human life. Once a female gets married, she is committed for her life. If she divorces her husband, her human life is damaged. There is no other way for her to take. In like manner, if you leave the recovery, no one will curse you, but you will damage the way of your spiritual life. You will have no way to go on according to God's New Testament economy. In God's ordination, a woman should have only one husband. The Lord is her husband, and this in his way is our husband's way. If a woman does not take her husband's way, she complicates the way of her human life. This is my word of love, advice, and warning. So my concern is that the implication here is that if you are not in the recovery, then you are leaving your husband. You're divorcing Christ. It seems to imply that there's no way to be married to the Lord and to quote, leave the recovery. Well, I would also like to ask, what is it to leave the Lord's recovery? Because, that's just another loaded question. But, there are some that have been forced away, who have been banned from, quote, the Lord's recovery. So does it mean that to be in the Lord's recovery, you cannot speak out concerns? You cannot point out lies of leaders? You cannot point out blatant and gross sins? Some of those sins with very severe victimization of believers. So some have pointed out such things and have been banned from the meetings And then the teaching here to elders is that if you, quote, leave the Lord's recovery, then you damage your spiritual life and you are not taking your husband's way. I would also like to insert here a very deep and strong concern that this seems to eliminate all believers except those who identify as the Lord's recovery from being faithful, part of the faithful wife and bride of Christ. And I believe that's extremely exclusive and elitist and absolutely false, and absolutely despising of other believers. It does imply, if not completely blatantly state, that people who do not identify with the group that is following Witness Lee, that they are not faithful to Christ as their husband. Okay. The next paragraph I want to read is just a little further, and it says, a wife could say to her husband, I love you and I take you as my husband, but whatever you say, I have to bring to the Lord to see if it is really his leading for me. I need to pray to find out whether I should take your word wholly or in part, or whether it fits in with my situation. If a wife had this attitude, how would her husband feel? Her attitude is a kind of subtle dissension, and her husband would not be able to tolerate it forever. I have been tolerating such an attitude from some, though, for the past 15 years, but my toleration has ended. So in the context here, it does seem that Brother Lee is making himself as a husband to the saints. And this is really, really insulting to my husband, Christ, our husband, Christ. When believers get saved, we do not become the bride of Witness Lee, the wife of Witness Lee. We do not owe any human being a loyalty that prevents us from praying to seek the Lord's will for our lives. We do not become the counterpart of any human leader, believer, minister, apostle. It is extremely offensive to make analogous the relationship of elders or any other believers with Brother Lee as being that of a wife to her husband. Our husband is Christ alone. And this again also eliminates all the believers on the whole earth that do not identify as being, quote, in the Lord's recovery, but who are fervent, loving, faithful, Bible-believing Christians. I've met so many that love the Lord so much. Are you going to tell them that if you don't follow Witness Lee, you are not part of the bride of Christ? You are not part of the wife of the Lamb. You are living as a divorcee. You, Brother Lee, the minister of the age, has no tolerance for you. It just makes no sense, but it's extremely offensive. And I think I'll just let you all fellowship in the comments about this, mull over this, bring it to the Lord. But this is printed in the Living Stream Ministry publications that is making, that made this person speaking very, very wealthy. And I don't despise someone for being wealthy, but to print books that uplift yourself as the husband of believers who shouldn't pray to seek the Lord. By implication, he's saying you don't need to say, let me pray about this. Just as a wife shouldn't have to pray about what her husband says. Okay, that also opens another topic. But anyway, oh Lord, my heart is just very grieved by this. I hope there could be more fellowship. Take care and good night.